Welcome to the Friday Night Drive podcast, North and West edition. I'm Eddie Carifio. We're the North and West or South and West edition. Here I am, wadding my notes up, and here we go. Anyway, I'm Eddie Carifio. He's J.T. Pedelty. Man, that was a big biff, but it's okay because we're going to recover because, man, do we have a guest coming on in about 7 minutes. We'll make up for all of my tomfoolery. Sam Ramirez, Radio City Sam, joining us for an in-depth look at some Sauk Valley stuff. So anyway, JT, what's up?
Not much, Eddie. How you doing, man? Aside from
I was doing better about 2.5 minutes ago.
No, doing very good. Gotta get to go this weekend. I'm going down to a football game. One we won't discuss much on the podcast today, if at all. It'll be Westmont at Fieldcrest. Just a few teams I haven't got to see. But down in Minunk, home of the Minunk Chocolate Company, which around these parts makes all the caramel whips and caramel apples and everything. So they never taste as good as when you get them right there. So plus should be a good football game, which is, kind of secondary to.
I mean, caramel and football. I don't know what else you're needing in life.
Yeah, and a quality pork chop sandwich. So all good. What's going on in your world, man?
Where is there not a good pork chop sandwich? I mean, I know we're not going to say it on the air, but I don't, you've never heard anyone ever say, oh, man, the pork chops at so-and-so, they're just the worst. Every place, they're the best pork chop sandwiches.
Yeah, I don't think there are bad pork chop sandwiches, but there are better ones. There are ones that are top. I'll tell you what, this is, boy, now we're already in the weeds.
It doesn't matter. I started us in the weeds. Let's roll with
it. In week 2, I went to Flanagan for Flanagan Cornell Woodlands home game, and they had a lot of schools don't have the ribeye sandwiches anymore, just because I think it's the cost of the meat and blah, blah, blah. Who wants to pay $15 for a sandwich at a high school football game? But they had it, and you had to fold it 3 times to get it on the bun. And it was like a good 1/4 inch, maybe more than 1/4 inch thick ribeye. It wasn't like the paper thin Ponderosa ribeyes. So it was a sandwich and a half for like $9. It was amazing.
Yeah. So you're talking like what, half a pound if it was that
big? No, it was amazing. And they didn't know I was the newspaper guy and trying to butter me up or anything. It was just, a guy in some schmuck in line. So it was amazing. So if you're around Flanagan and you see the lights on, which it lights up pretty much 3/4 of the town on a Friday night, just stop and get a sandwich. It'll be well worth your stop.
Yeah, that was the pre-Google Map days of finding the stadium in the small town. You didn't really need it. Just look for the lights.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? We're starting on a little smaller school football. So if you wanted to, I was kind of thinking we could start off with Dwight and Marquette. Wouldn't be a bad
unacceptable.
One. Down my way. Chicagoland Prairie Conference matchup. Dwight's 3-0. Marquette's 1-2. Coming up this Friday night. I mean, Marquette has 2 losses. True, but they're to quality teams. 5 points to 2-1 Aurora Christian, and a 35-point loss to Seneca, which Seneca's handed a lot of teams 35-point losses on there now. 23-game regular season winning streak. But Marquette does have a soft stretch of schedule coming up here. Up through week 6 after this one tonight. I mean, relatively soft stretch of schedule. They do have a rival in St. Bede in there, but this is, you don't have to panic if you're Marquette if you go to 1-3, because like I said, there's some very winnable games coming down the pike here in the near future, but you don't want to be 1-3. And if you want to do anything in the playoffs, there's a recipe for that: beat playoff teams. And Marquette hasn't been able to do that yet. So, they get to host Dwight here. I think that should be a good game. Dwight's 3 opponents so far are combined 1-8. So you're not sure what to expect from them, but, Aiden Collum, Dwight's running back, has 176 yards last week. Mark Dwight ran for 372. So going to be a lot of running plays, a very fast moving clock. Our Charlie Ellerbrock will be there covering. And what I think should be a good game between Dwight trying to prove that they are for real and move to 4-0, and Marquette trying to be like, no, we're still one of the powerhouses in Class 1A down here. Should be a good one, Eddie.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering Marquette's run defense, how's that look this year? Because obviously it looks like if they can contain Collin, they'll be in good shape. How from what you've seen or read from Charlie's stuff, what do they bring into the table run defense wise?
I think they're solid and hard nosed as ever. Seneca made them look bad. Seneca makes everybody look bad. Seneca runs a power T formation, which look it up. It makes the wing T look progressive. But it's really fun to watch.
If the wing tee's too flashy for you, the penalty's right there.
Yeah, it's like, in the NFL they talk about blocking tight ends or such that's all what tight ends do in this offense, and there's like 2 or 3 of them. It's fun to watch. But yeah, their run defense has been pretty decent this year, aside from the Seneca game. But I think at the end of the regular season, you're going to have 7 opponents, because I think they play 2 teams twice. You're going to have 7 or 8 opponents say, our run defense was pretty good, other than the Seneca game. So, yeah, I think it should be a good matchup. Obviously, whoever can run the ball and whoever can stop the run, and control field possession, all the coachisms that, we roll our eyes when they say them, but they're always true. So that's what's going to decide this one, I think.
Well, now's a good time, Eddie. Now is as good a time as any to bring in our guest, as promised, Sam Ramirez. Sam, thanks for joining us this week.
Hey, Eddie, J.T., it's good to see you guys, and thanks for having me here on your podcast.
Absolutely. Sam, welcome to the Shaw Local team.
Yeah.
Sam works with our Shaw Local radio in Dixon. Obviously knows a lot about high school sports up that way, been at it a long time, kind of, welcome aboard to the team and to the podcast.
Yeah, it's fun to be here. I know you guys do a great job every single week talking about high school sports, in particular football, and I'm just glad to be a part of it and talk a little bit about what I get to see right here in the Sauk Valley area.
Well, start up my neck of the woods and your neck of the woods. GK Dixon this week. This is a interesting one. I don't going to be 2 3-0 teams coming in, but Oregon had different ideas about that with a crazy 3-0 win last week. Oregon needed a win to avoid going to 0-3. A dangerous team in that situation, and they proved it. So now a little of the luster's off the game, but it still should be very interesting. Mostly from where I'm thinking, it's what can GK's defense, which has been excellent all year, do against this Dixon offense, which is beyond excellent all year. Yeah. What makes this Dixon offense so special?
They're well balanced. Colin Shaner's the first-year quarterback, but his brother Tyler was the starting quarterback the last 2 years, and Colin's kind of picking right up where his brother left off last year. He's able to throw the ball. I know in their Week 1 win over Stillman Valley, he threw for close to 300 yards, but not only can he throw the ball, but he can also run the ball, and he's basically that kind of quarterback where you don't know if he's going to throw it or whether he's going to take off running. Another key to that team is Eli Davidson. He started as a freshman, and right on the offensive backfield, he was also a linebacker. He is now a senior for the Dukes, and you get him the ball, and he's a tough guy to bring down. But the one thing about Dixon, too, they got a really stingy defense. And I think Dixon is only allowing about 7 points per game this year. And as a matter of fact, their first-string defense has only given up 1 touchdown this year. So you throw in a team that's averaging 51 a game and a team only allowing 7 points per game. Right now, Dixon off to a 3-0 start for this season and looking pretty good.
And that's the scary part, where it's got to be where GK is coming from, is even if your defense can, contain or limit that offense, you still got to put up more points than them. And obviously GK has had some issues with scoring this year. One of the other aspects I'm kind of interested in this is, obviously you mentioned all the elements of the Dixon passing game. GK has been able to force some turnovers. Dixon can run the ball too. They have a lot of backs that can do some things. They had a good rushing game last week, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Yeah, they share the ball really well in the backfield. They got about 3 or 4 different guys who can carry the ball. And I know Coach Shaner, we're talking about Jared Shaner, the head football coach, he's got a lot of confidence in his guys in the backfield. And yeah, you know what? Colin can throw the ball, but they can also run the ball. So it's not as if, when you go into a game against Dixon, it's not as if you can say, well, we're going to stack the box and stop the rush. It's not as if you can say, well, we're just going to focus on stopping the pass, because the Dukes do both aspects very, very well.
And Sam, I kind of, and this is kind of a bigger picture thing, kind of a little bit of history to it, but Dixon, and I'm from Streeter. There were teams that kind of formed that Northern Illinois Big 12 out of the remnants of the NCIC,
Yep.
and at the time, Dixon and Streeter were, kind of neither one of them really wanted to go in the NIB 12, but they didn't really have any better options, and as soon as they found an exit, they ran for the door and don't let them hit it on the butts on the way out, as they went different directions in conferences. And really I remember when the NIB 12 was kind of falling apart. that Dixon, there was a lot of chatter about Dixon was kind of, they got some good classes coming up. They got some good kids at the JYFL level or whatever it would be. And kind of, Dixon might be able to compete in this league if they stuck it out for a little bit. Dixon obviously chose to go another path, and it's obviously worked out well for him. Kind of how much of an improvement, from talking from those old Nib 12 teams that haven't seen Dixon football in a few years, kind of what's been different about Dixon these past 5-ish years, aside from the opponents? What has been different in the program that they've built themselves into really a powerhouse, which no one expected kind of back in the day?
Well, Dixon joined the Big Northern in 2014, so believe it or not, it's been 10 years now since Dixon left. Basically, when the Big 12 sort of dissolved, Dixon went to the Big Northern 10 years ago. And prior to 2014, Dixon had only been to the playoffs 5 times in school history. And since they have joined the Big Northern Conference, they have gone 10 straight years and will more than likely get in this year as well. So I think the big key, obviously, is they're playing schools a little bit smaller than them. And just to be honest, the Big Northern, they are the big school in the Big Northern. But Coach Shaner, and even going back to when Coach Smith was there, Dave Smith was there prior to Coach Shaner, they've done a really great job of building this program up sort of from the ground up. People talk about, the lower levels. Well, Dixon has some good football at the lower levels, and these kids just trickle on up to the varsity level. And I think those are the 2 keys why Dixon has sustained that every single year since they've joined the Big Northern.
10 years.
My personal my personal theory is Dixon being in the Big Northern is probably why Rochelle will never end up joining it. Well, they'll never let Rochelle in, I believe, because I know they're going to need a team coming up here next year, and I get the feeling it will not be Rochelle. So he's going to break what's not going to happen.
What's going to be interesting, though, and I'm kind of getting off track here a little bit. Rockford Christian is not playing football this year. You guys are probably well aware of that. It's going to be interesting to see what direction they want to go in with Rockford Christian in the next couple of years with their football program. I don't know if Rockford Christian is going to be able to field a team even next year. So you're going to have to do some outside the box thinking, and who knows, maybe they'll try to add another team to the conference with the thought of, hey, that way we have the full football schedule all within the Big Northern Conference.
I don't want to say I'm super plugged in. My name's not Seuss or anything, but I do think they're going to bring someone in. It's going to be clarified a lot in the first week of October. I think they have an AD meeting. So I think a lot of that stuff is clarified. But, while we're on the subject of the BNC, there's another interesting one this week, and it's Byron and North Boone. North Boone, if I'm not mistaken, their lone loss this year is to GK. They're turning around and playing Byron. Well, what do you know about this one? I see this one kind of shaking out.
Well, you know what? To be honest, I think Byron is the team still to beat in the Big Northern. I think Byron and Dixon are the 2 teams that are sort of way above everybody right now in the Big Northern Conference. And I apologize. I talk with my hands. I'm in radio. I'm not used to being on films or video. So
I don't know what you mean.
But, I think the thing with North Boone and what a lot of people don't realize, when North Boone played Oregon, and I cover Oregon Hawks football now for 25 years, in game 1 this year, North Boone had a 18-13 lead with 6 seconds to go, and they had it 4th and about 3. Their quarterback dropped back, and instead of taking a knee, sort of scrambled around back there. Oregon made the tackle, and the quarterback from North Boone tore his ACL on that play. So he is out. Their second-string quarterback got hurt in that game as well at playing a different position. So North Boone is actually on a 3rd-string quarterback, and that's something you don't want to be, having to happen when you go into a game against a team like Byron. Byron coming off that big win over Williamsville last week, 42-3, state-ranked Williamsville. I don't think Byron has a letdown game. I think they roll again this week over North Boone.
And, one other game that you mentioned, Sam, that you kind of want to discuss a little bit was an 8-man game. Amboy Lamoille Ohio Co-op against Bushnell Prairie City. Amboy's 3-0, Prairie City's 2-1. We just talked a little 8-man, but when we talked about the ribeye sandwiches at Flanagan Cornell Woodland, the important stuff, But what? I mean, in 8-man, this certainly last season, it was Amboy and it was everybody else. It looks like the Clippers are just kind of rolling again.
What's interesting about Amboy is they went in a different direction this year. They're in that West Division where they're playing teams like Bushnell, Prairie City, and Galva. They've gone more towards the western part of the state where they don't see the Milledgeville, the Polos, the Ashton Franklin centers. And as a matter of fact, they're going to play Bushnell, Prairie City twice this year. They'll play them in Amboy in week 9 on a Saturday. But yeah, the Clippers are rolling. They have won 16 straight games dating back to their state championship last year. I don't know if they have the exact same firepower they had last year defensively, but they're making it look easy so far here this season.
Yeah, I got to see them in the playoffs last season, and I think it was Flanagan Cornell Woodland up in Amboy, and I think Flanagan Cornell Woodland took the opening kickoff and drove down the field methodically and ate up clock and scored a touchdown. I was like, wow, kind of everyone was looking around, and boy, about 6 seconds later, Amboy was in the touchdown, and they're in the end zone, and they never stopped in a blowout win. It was just like you said, massive firepower. We know they graduated a lot of that, but good programs kind of find a way to reload, not rebuild, and that definitely seems like what's going on in Amboy.
Yeah, Coach Payne's got a great thing going down there in Amboy, and when you make the switch to 8-man football, Amboy's a program that actually had more kids go out to play football because they were switching to 8-man, and they got a lot of talent down there in Amboy for the next several years.
One last thing to bring up, we do our click to pick. You're going to have to leave soon. We'll let you do your pick to click, and as I understand it, it's from a game I did want to talk about a little bit. Oregon, Winnebago, this seems like 1-2 teams. Obviously, someone is going to be in a very bad situation after this. What's your take on this one? And I'll tee you up. Who is there to watch in this, Sam?
Well, when it comes to Oregon, I'll give you a little backstory. Before the season started, it was the week before the first Friday game. Oregon's 2-year starting quarterback found out he could not play, had some hip issues with some blood clots in his leg. So he did not obviously start in game 1, and they have ruled him out for the year. Guy by the name of Jack Washburn. Oregon's second string quarterback, Cooper Johnson, hurt his ankle in week 1 against North Boone. So Oregon went from the spread offense, and going into week 2, they went back to the traditional wing tee that John Bothy did for a lot of years in Oregon, and they are now going to stay with that offense for the rest of the year with a third, fourth string quarterback. They're alternating between 2 different quarterbacks at that position. So you look at Winnebago, it's a program right now, 16, 17 healthy bodies. Winnebago struggling to get numbers right now. And like you said, Eddie, it's a must win for both teams. It's homecoming in Oregon. And I know, what do you guys call it? The pick to click? And I think the pick to click is going to be Oregon running back Logan Weems. He rushed for over 1,100 yards last year, and so far he's only rushed for about 200 this year. I look for him to have a big game on the ground. I think he's going to go for well over 100 yards on Friday night. I look for him to get a couple of touchdowns. Logan Weems from Oregon is my pick to click this coming weekend.
Sam, thank you for joining us. Sam Ramirez from Shaw Local Radio Dixon. And Sam, hoping you can join us in the near future again. Love to get some, expert opinion up on the games up in the Sauk Valley area. Kind of our areas of expertise, kind of our coverage area kind of has 3. It's kind of a nice little triangle there, and kind of you complete that other side of it. So
we're the tri-corner hat of Shaw Media.
Yes.
Right. And anytime you guys want me, I'm more than happy to join you. You guys do a great job.
Oh, thank you, Sam. And you added that today as well.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care, man.
Took it up a notch, man. That's something. That's just a professional.
I think, we're going to have some problems following up that. I think we need to have him on towards the end of the show or something.
Yeah, I know. Lord. Want to yell about districts for a little bit? I could just go to my safety zone.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. You know what? You have a game that I find very interesting, kind of one of those teams that we don't get to a ton because they kind of fall in like a little
the middle of the tri-corner hats.
Yeah, a little donut hole right in the middle of all of our areas of heavy influence. But we see the heck out of them because they're in a conference. They're in a 6-team conference. That literally,
I did not know the Interstate 8 has 6 teams. Come on, man. It's right there, not in the name.
I remember the NIB 12 had 10. I don't know, man. I'm not good at math. But Sycamore at Rochelle, that's a couple 3-0 teams. Sycamore's kind of been at the top of the heap with Morris here the past few years, but Rochelle's one of those teams that's just always right there, always has a good team, and looks like they do again.
Yeah, no, they're set up very nicely to get the win. I don't want to call it an upset. I think both teams would be mad at that, but I think they're very set up to get the win this year. They are running the ball extraordinarily well. This is going to be the matchup here. Put a pin in this for my pick to click later, foreshadowing.
Well, definitely don't call it an upset because Rochelle's been here for years, Eddie. Sorry, had to.
Well, Mama did say to knock them out, so. Rochelle's been running the ball excellently this year. I think they had lots of backs to that. I think 3 of them hit over 100 yards against Highland last week in a win. They had more than 400 yards rushing, I'm pretty sure, against Highland. They're running the crap out of the ball, very effective in that smash mouth offense. Sycamore I don't want to say struggled against the run this year. And you take them the Muhammad Seymour game last week. And Muhammad Seymour, pass first, pass heavy team. They had a wide receiver go down in the second quarter. Like obviously their stud was getting like 80% of the passes thrown to him. They stopped throwing the ball. They still ran 89 plays in the game. I think like 60 of them were run plays. But Sycamore was still so afraid of the pass, and probably rightfully so, because there's still some guys that can make plays. But even when Muhammad was definitely, running, Sycamore was keeping guys back. They were still not stacking the box. So it wasn't like they were going 100% against the run. And they still held them to, even though there were some, mid-level plays, a 6-8 yard play on first down here and there to keep the short field that leads to some long drives. Most of them eventually fizzled out. The Sycamore defense held. And so it was really interesting. Now, without any hands tied behind their back, a little less worried about the pass with Rochelle than you are from Muhammad Seymour. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle that running attack, if they can have that performance that they've been waiting for this year.
Yeah, I'm really kind of, these are teams, they're not total strangers to each other since the Kishwaukee River Interstate 8 kind of alliance kind of fell apart. They're not total strangers to each other. I think they met once or twice in crossover games.
They did play last year.
Split. Yeah, so not total strangers to each other. So I think they're both pretty familiar with what they do.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, the former Rochelle coach is at Kevin Crandall is an assistant with Sycamore. So I mean, there's a lot of that. He has been for a few years now.
Yeah, Kevin's an excellent coach. I remember him back in his head coaching days.
Yeah, he's been assisting with Sycamore for a while. So it's there's a lot of ties between the two teams, even though there was a stretch where they didn't play for a while at the start of the whatever the KRCIA merger or whatever it was. But no, like you said, very familiar with one another.
Deadly alliance it was.
It's dead.
deadly for the Interstate 8 because Sandwich and Plano went to the Kishwaukee River. But yeah, I think this is going to be one of those games. We've talked ad nauseum here the past 2 years about Sycamore and Morris, Canelan creep up, and then it's always kind of right there with Canelan. Rochelle. Are they don't sleep on Rochelle. So this is a chance for Rochelle. This could be Rochelle's coming out party. They'll be ready for it. So I think that would be should be a really, really good matchup. We have another one in the Interstate 8, Eddie. Morris is 2-1 visiting 2-1 LaSalle, Peru. I guess the story of this game, the questions coming in is, how high has LP come? They have a quality 8-point loss at Metamora. They dismantled Ottawa last week in the first of 2 meetings between the arch rivals this year. Sorry, arch rivals. So how high has LP risen? And then, Morris, a lot of people thought, man, they graduated a lot. They're going to be down a little. And then week 1, I think they were down to Coal City, into the second quarter. They ended up pulling away, but beating Coal City, a 4A team. Joliet West kind of hung with Morris, maybe more than people expected in week 2. And then last week, Morris took a loss 58-52 to Peoria High. And just every time I see a Peoria High score, I crack up. Sorry. It's just, it's always the outlier.
Higher scoring than basketball games.
Yeah.
Morris isn't going to play a 58-52 game. I don't think there's going to be a 58-52 game in the I-8 this year.
It's quite possible there won't be. Yeah, and that's just every Peoria High game. So Peoria Morris on the wrong side of that one, 58-52. So is Morris down? They're 2-1. They lost to a great program in in a game that was Peoria High's style. So that's not a big surprise. 2-1's a fine place to be, but are they down at all? Is LP up at all? Kind of, we're not really sure. So this is one where I think the storyline is, I've seen Morris and LP play a few times over the past couple of years. Honestly, it's been usually one of the few games where I get to see these two teams is when they play each other. It just kind of always falls that way. And saw them in the playoffs in 2022, and LP has never been able to match up in recent years to Morris, their physicality up front and their skill on the outside. And that's been game after game after game, meeting after meeting, when they play twice a year, a couple years in a row. That's always been the story. So has LP bridged that gap a little bit? Even if they don't win, can they hang with Morris? Because if they can, then I think you're talking about an LP team that's maybe on its way to a playoffs, even with the loss.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it kind of answers the questions. It's one of those things where, I don't know, it's a weird situation where, the expectations are on Morris. So even if Morris wins handily, I don't think it kind of answers the questions, because then it's kind of easy to dismiss. Oh, well, they should have done that, and they've always done that. But I think that's also doing a disservice to, the season LP's having too. So it's definitely an interesting situation for this one. But yeah, no, it should tell us a lot, because, man, the top of the IA is crowded. I don't think we're going to really talk about Kalen all that much this week. Anything you want to throw in on that one? It's Kalen, Ottawa, right? So
yeah, Kalen, Ottawa. You have to like Kalen's chances. So Kalen really good. Ottawa off to a tough start. They handled Streeter pretty handily in week 2, but around that in weeks 1 and 3, close loss to Plano, and then just kind of things did not go well last week. So
yeah. So the point being, just that the top of the IA just seems, there's so many teams that can make a stake to it. LP obviously wants to get into the conversation, and with the win, hell, they're in it. So
it's interesting. You mentioned when Sam was on, you mentioned kind of Rochelle. You don't think would be that team to slide over to Big Northern to fill a slot and everything. Rochelle, as much history pieces as I've done over the year, because I'm practically part of history now, as long as I've been in the business. But it's very interesting. Rochelle's kind of always kind of been that team at the front of the pack, ready to look somewhere else for a conference. They even years before the NCIC, and then in the NCIC, kind of Rochelle's looking for something better is a big reason why things kind of started to fall apart. So it's interesting here, because the Interstate 8 is so loaded at the top, and Rochelle's kind of one of those teams that in another conference would probably be a team at the top, and kind of is in the middle of the Interstate 8 and has been, since it's gone to this new format, just because of the power of the Interstate 8. And I'm sure, Rochelle was perfectly happy with that Kishwaukee River alliance and going to the small side of that. And now I'm sure I shouldn't say I'm sure. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Rochelle was kind of, looking for another situation, just because of the way the Interstate 8 is stacked right now. But, Rochelle with the chance this week to say, no, we're one of those teams at the top, So, so a couple good decent games in the Interstate 8, I think, this week.
Yeah, no, definitely interesting. You got anything else down there?
Kind of in that Morris area issues would be in Wilmington, Peatone 3-0, visiting Wilmington 3-0. 2 3-0 teams in the Illinois Central 8. Both used to be in the Interstate 8, but not when any of the teams who are in the Interstate 8 now were in the Interstate 8.
Weird. I'm sure there's some conferences that have had a weirder history than the Interstate 8, just by the nature of the beast and how long this has been in place. But Lord Almighty, this is a weird modern conference. And I don't want to take anything away from the Chicagoland Prairie.
Yeah, you almost have to talk different eras, not a Taylor Swift reference, but you almost have to say, when you say Interstate 8 history, do you mean the Wilmington Coal City history? Do you mean the Sandwich Plano history? Do you mean like when Streeter was in it for a couple years? Do you mean this new one where pretty much it's been taken over by large schools and all the small schools went off on their own? So it's weird. I know Sandwich's, I believe it was Sandwich's principal, or Plano's. I think it was Sandwich's principal at the time when the Illinois Central 8 formed, or when the Interstate 8 kind of became what it was. I remember talking to them about it kind of falling apart and all the small schools leaving, and him telling me, oh no, he's like, don't write off the Interstate 8. He's like, it has a lot of history and we're going to save it. And Sandwich and Plano did for a few years, and then they left it, and now it's in the hands of a bunch of teams who have absolutely nothing to do with Interstate 8 history. So
yeah, that's oh wow. But Peatone and Wilmington
tis what it is. However, in one of the offshoots of the Interstate 8, the Illinois Central 8, this is a good matchup. You know, there's a handful of games this year that'll decide the top half of the standings in the Illinois Central 8, the ice. And this is one of them. You know, I'm very interested to see how good Peatone is. You know, they have a great running game, a great defense that creates turnovers, and just a great head coach, Tali Siamis, which I'll admit I had to look up his name, how to pronounce it.
Both of them.
Yes.
I don't think Tali's a freebie.
Yeah. Tali's he kind of goes by Tali to people who can't pronounce his first name, which I'm not going to See, I'm not going to do it. But anyway, this is the first of those games. You know, obviously you have Wilmington, you have Coal City, maybe just a step below Wilmington, and then right below them you have Peatone and Mantino, who are all both 3-0 and looking to kind of knock on the door here. So, you know, these are the teams that are going to be competing at the top of the ice conference. I think this is going to be a really good matchup. You know, even in a close, as I said earlier about LP and their matchup with Morris. You know, if Peatone loses this game, you're still 3-1. If you hang with Wilmington, man, that's got to be a shot of confidence. I know they're not in practice saying, let's hang with Wilmington, break.
Yeah.
But
lost. Let's do this.
But hanging with Wilmington is I think would be a really good accomplishment for Peatone. A win would be an obviously even greater one. So I think that's a really good matchup kind of down this way that I got my eyes on, and one that's maybe not going to be quite as close or quite as competitive, but is interesting. I think deserves mention. On the other side, moving west, Princeton is at Kewanee. Princeton 3-0, Kewanee 1-2. But Kewanee, you know, their two losses have come by a combined 10 points, 13 to 6 to Erie Prophetstown, 24-21 to Monmouth Roseville. It's hard for me to envision Princeton having too tough a time with this one, but it's kind of good to keep tabs on Princeton, because they got a week 5 visit to you know, also undefeated Monmouth Roseville coming up. So I thought that one was worth mentioning, and just kind of an interesting matchup, and kind of see if Kewanee, you know, they've played 3 close games. They could easily be 3-0 right now. So, you know, see if they can give Princeton a test.
Yeah, even at 3-0 though, as we have cataloged throughout this podcast, and with Kevin Hieronymus last week. Kevin was on last week, right? He was. That was last week.
Sounds right.
We know exactly what Princeton's bringing to the table. So, yeah, Princeton probably, given my intense expertise and familiarity with these teams, going way back over a year and a half.
But yeah, Kewanee is coming off a game where they gave up 363 yards rushing. So I certainly like Princeton's chances in this, but like I said, I think worth a mention just because of how close Kewanee's games have been this year, and because that Princeton Monmouth Roseville showdown's coming up next week. So be interesting to see if Princeton can kind of you know, show what they're capable of this week, and be ready for what should be a undefeated matchup for probably a conference championship next week.
So is your click to pick from that game, or is it from another game?
Oh man, you at the transitions today are just on point. You know what? I'm
going to make up somewhere, you know.
I'm going a totally different direction. I'm going to the ice conference. Mantino quarterback Connor Herod. You know, he had a hand in 6 touchdowns last week when Mantino, also 3-0, blew out Herscher. 3 rushing, 3 passing. The kid can do it all. Going up at home against a Streeter team that just allowed Coal City's sophomore backup quarterback Connor Henline, who wasn't even listed on the varsity roster. I had to ask a guy on the sidelines, hey, is this kid from the sophomore team with a different number? And yes, it is. Streeter allowed him to Henline to complete his first 5 passes, 3 of them for touchdowns. You know, and Connor Henline's, you know, looks like an excellent quarterback to be for Coal City, but you know, Streeter had some pretty big breakdowns in the passing game, pass defense game. So I see a big game coming for Mantino quarterback Connor Herod against Streeter. If Streeter can't figure things out on the defensive end, you know, I think it's going to be another long night for him against a quarterback of this caliber. Who you have in mind, Eddie?
I'm going with that Sycamore Rochelle game. I mean, that is the marquee game up here anyway. But yeah, I'm going with Caden O'Donnell from Sycamore, linebacker, and we talked about that run game. He's had a huge year. He's been all over the field. He's, I want to say, their second leading tackler at this point. Had a huge interception against DeKalb that sealed that win in that back and forth contest in week 1 at Husky Stadium. Given how much Rochelle runs the ball, he was poised somewhere. Low estimate, 413 tackles, I think. So he's going conservative.
I think that's our first pick to click. I like this.
Yeah, he's definitely in line for a bunch of tackles, and I think he gets a turnover, maybe not an interception. Given Rochelle's probably going to pass 9 times, and that's probably being a little too high in estimating that. But I think he forces some kind of turnover in the game, has a huge game at the linebacker spot, and helps Sycamore get a tough win.
I like it. Player.
Yeah, there's specificity for you. And I'm never wrong, so just don't play this back.
Perfect. Are you at Rochelle? Where are you at this Friday?
No, I'm not at Rochelle. I'm at DeKalb. Russ Hodges will be handling the Sycamore Rochelle game for us. I'll be at DeKalb. They get Lincoln Way Central. And the first game for both teams in the Southwest Valley Green Conference. So, but that should be an interesting one. Obviously, DeKalb needing a win, can't really fall to 0-4. I want to say Lincoln Way Central comes in 1-2. So, it's a must win for DeKalb at this point. But a bunch of doozies up here. Rochelle Sycamore. Obviously, that GK Dixon one has a potential to be intriguing. There's been some shockers in the BNC. I think GK has the tools. It comes down to their defense, but I think in the end, that Dixon offense, there's maybe one defense that can slow them down. Maybe.
Yeah, a lot to add. Well, sounds like we got a good week 4 on tap, Eddie. I'm looking forward to it tomorrow night, and hopefully I will see some of you guys on the sidelines, and tune in tomorrow night. We'll have our Friday night live video cast.
Live show.
Show and running in the evening, right about when the football games end. You go to FridayNightDrive.com or any of our Shaw local properties, and Steve Susie and Matt Rodewald, I believe, will take you through highlights, and you might even see Eddie and I's faces again 2 days in a row. I apologize in advance.
You can ask for a refund. You'll see the sweet polo too.
Yeah. But take us out, Eddie.
Okay, well, that's our show. Appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll be back next week. I haven't lined up a guest yet. We need to get a guest for next week. There's a big Princeton game. I don't want to give a spoiler, but that's going to lend itself to being the guest. We'll see. But anyway, he's J.T. Pedelty. I'm Eddie Carifio. Thank you.